All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Urjanet's webinar, Energy Data, the New Profit Lever. We're thrilled to have all of you joining us, along with our partners at eSight and Verdantix. Today, we'll be discussing how big energy data can improve your organization's profitability. My name is Erik Becker, and with me today is Janie Jeffries-Freer, the president of eSight Energy, along with Alisdair McDougall of Verdantix, a leading energy analyst firm. So thank you both for being with us today. This is going to be a great session. We'll start with Alisdair discussing his research on the key drivers that lead to investments in energy management software. And also, he'll be sharing his thoughts on where your organizations can begin to look for savings. And then we'll look at some of the energy reporting capabilities provided by eSight and some case studies highlighting how their clients were able to improve profitability with the use of big energy data. And then finally, we'll wrap up learning more about how Urjanet can provide the data that's needed to support these types of initiatives. And we'll have a chance for Q&A at the end. As we go through the presentation today, please submit questions in the chat window. At the end of the session, we'll answer as many of those as we can. But I will let you know that what I'm often asked is, are you going to get a copy of the presentation? And yes, you will get both a copy of the slides and a recording of the session. It'll be mailed out to you after the webinar is over. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Alisdair.
Thanks very much, Erik. So once again, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. And a brief introduction to myself is I'm an industry analyst here at Verdantix, and I sit in our energy team out of our London office. And at Verdantix, I'm the lead analyst on energy management software and technology that firms are using for impacting their energy management. In terms of today's webinar, there are two things which I'd like to go through today. One of those being, why are firms investing in energy management software? And then the second one is some suggestions on where we think your firm should start looking for savings. So the first one, why are firms investing in energy management software? Well, we see there being four main drivers for firms investing in energy management, and those are economics, customers, sustainability, and legislation. And the economic driver is the one which people are most familiar with in terms of being able to impact energy consumption can drive down energy costs. But you also have to look at aspects such as increasing energy prices or the variability we can see in energy prices to again further enhance the economic benefit of taking a closer look to energy management. And the benefit here is any opportunities can improve both the top and bottom line performance. If we then look at customers, the customers' attitudes towards the firms which they now engage with are changing over time, especially when we look at big consumer-facing industries such as the apparel or retail sector. And customers are increasingly placing more value on how organizations operate and how they impact the world in which we live in. And this is driving firms to look at the sustainability of their products or also their own internal operations. We also see sustainability as an increasing item popping up on the corporate agenda, where firms are coming around to the idea of sustainability and using that as a tool to actually look for opportunities within their organization. And we're seeing more and more firms committing to sustainability targets, which include energy reduction, but also looking at areas such as water, carbon, waste. And one of the key reasons firms are moving to sustainability is by looking at your organization through a sustainability lens, it can highlight a number of opportunities. And these can be operational efficiency, improving quality of service, cost reduction, attracting and retaining valuable employees, improving your brand perception in the market, or potentially even generating new revenue channels. And the fourth one is legislation. As the debate around climate change goes on, and hopefully there's not too many skeptics listening, but we see more and more nations developing legislation to try and impact the impact which we're all having on the environment. And this is increasing the burden placed on corporates to be able to comply with that legislation, but also mitigate risks which could come through financial penalties placed on organizations. So in terms of those four main drivers, there's two distinct ways which we generally see firms traditionally thinking about these. And we see economics and customers in a very positive light, where firms are very familiar that economics have a positive impact on their business, and so does any involvement or engagement with their customer base. Those are seen as cash generating. But areas such as sustainability and legislation are normally met with a negative perception and seen as things which are going to cost an organization money, and generally because they're things you've never had to deal with before. So with legislation, a new piece of legislation, it's another financial burden on the organization. Or sustainability projects which you may have to do will come with capital costs. But the way that we really see that firms should be looking at these four main drivers is like this, interlinked. So not taking them out as separate, they should all be seen as having a positive impact on the organization. And potentially looking at the hardest one to try and justify in terms of having a positive impact would be legislation. How can looking at energy management in terms of legislation be beneficial to my organization? Well, unfortunately, it's something you cannot escape from legislation. It's something you have to comply with. And if you're going to comply, you should look to do it in the most beneficial way to your organization. Therefore, by setting up your organization so that it can handle the compliance procedures, but also react quickly to new legislation, can mean you actually reduce the costs of legislation to your organization, which have a direct economic benefit, as opposed to some of your peers who may not be as well prepared. Again, if we look at sustainability, sustainability will, in some instances, have upfront costs. But in a number of instances, there's a number of quick wins which you can do in terms of just by taking a refreshed look at your organization, which can both benefit the economics perspective in terms of being cash generating, but also impact your customers in terms of the perception of you in the market compared to some of your peers. And again, if we look at some of the sort of high scale and high impact news stories that can come out now around, for example, supply chains, those are very much sustainability issues, which if it's a negative storyline about bad practice within the supply chain or potential contamination, will have an impact on your customer base, which can actually have a negative impact on your economics. But it's all very well saying that we should treat all four drivers with equal weighting, but that's simply not practice in the real world, and we definitely see a prioritization. And this chart here is from a study where we interviewed 250 energy leaders, and we asked them to rank the importance of a number of drivers, and we see there that cost savings and compliance with legislation, followed by energy price risk mitigation, definitely came out as the top drivers, and those are sensible. It's what we would expect to see. There continue to be the top drivers because they have a direct financial impact on the organization or a direct risk associated. Whereas when we move into sustainability targets and reputational benefits, some of the positives are a little less tangible, so firms find it a little bit harder to communicate or quantify the benefits. So with this in mind, we're going to concentrate on the cost savings perspective. So if cost savings and economic benefits are driving investment in energy management, how do you go about cutting the costs if you can't see where they are? So it's It's a telling story within most organizations. They will one day realize this is something we should look at, but that means that they're obviously very hard to find in some instances, the savings, because if they weren't hard to find, you would likely have already made sure that you were benefiting from them to begin with. And the first stage, which we really advise firms on, is ensuring you have good access to good quality granular data. That really is the first step in uncovering previously invisible opportunities. Once you have your hands on the data, you can start really identifying where the issues are occurring and where you can get the biggest return on your investment. However, we see that as a sort of increasing trend within the market, and we see that firms are on varying levels of how much data they have access to, but that story of ensuring you have the information and the data, essentially the tools at your disposal to find these savings, is a trend we are seeing throughout energy management strategies. And we're seeing energy data size go from being small and patchy to large global data sets. The frequency at which data is captured is going from utility bills and sometimes only being assessed on a quarterly or yearly basis to near real time in some industries. The data governance level is moving from departmental up to the enterprise level. Technology investment is no longer being site-specific, but looking at integrated energy systems to bring the entire corporation together in terms of what it's doing around energy management. And the organizational requirements from this information is going from a solely data aggregation and consolidation sort of involvement of just collecting data in some instances for the sake of collecting data, to actually looking at portfolio and strategic risk management, so making that data really work for your organization. But the second step we see with firms is you need a good way of organizing all of this newfound data. If you don't have it, you'll just find yourself with another headache of having so much data but not really being able to get any value from it because there's no clear way of being able to handle it. So the next step we would say is really investing in a robust data management solution which can really help you organize that information and find the savings. And again, it's not something you should just take our word for. Your peers are already placing a significant focus on improving energy data collection and reporting. So from the same study of 250 corporate energy leaders, we see here a whopping 96% said it was either very important or important for their organization to improve energy data collection and reporting in the next financial year, with automated energy monitoring and targeting coming third there with 85%. So another benefit of having a energy management platform or data management platform solution in place is it really provides easy access to this information across the enterprise. And we see this data having benefits at a strategic and also a tactical level. So at the tactical level, this is where we're talking about this data benefiting firms in their, or individuals or teams in their day-to-day functions. So energy and facilities teams, CSR teams, EH&S teams, procurement, logistics, supply chain. Just some examples of where being able to access robust granular data would benefit them on a frequent basis. And then looking at the strategic level, you've got individuals such as the CFO, CSO, COO, and CIO, which could all benefit again from having access to this information at the enterprise level. So being able to roll this data up and look at it at a business level really allows them to start basing some fairly strategic business objectives and targets on good quality data rather than estimations or, in some instances, just guesses. So what we've found and we continue to see is that combining data, analytics, and some good old-fashioned brain power really will result in your firm finding potentially significant savings. And it's that combination of having the correct individuals with the correct data which really is important in terms of finding savings. And however good technology gets, we are still some way off of it being able to solve all of our problems. However, in many instances, what firms face is they have really good quality people in the organization, but they're just lacking that data and analytics to really help them find all of the potential savings that may exist. So in terms of where your organization should start looking for savings, Verdantix created a energy management software business case toolkit, so a model to try and help put together the business case for investing in software. And we really base that on 3 areas of significant savings, first of all, as we feel these are the savings which are the easiest to quantify. And it's important with all energy investments, budgets are not plentiful. They can be very difficult to find. So we always advise firms, ensure there's no shame in going for the easy savings first, or the easy to quantify savings, because that's how you're going to get a reputation within the organization of, no, this actually works and there are benefits to be had. So we would advise firms to first of all look at energy efficiency opportunities within their existing portfolio, potential savings opportunities from better managing energy data for internal and external reporting purposes, and then the potential supply side savings associated with optimizing procurement strategies and better managing existing utility contracts. So the first of those is looking for efficiency opportunities within your existing portfolio. And we see that firms which lack a strategic energy management strategy or have not really thought about energy in any great detail will have a significant level of savings, which can be found from even being able to monitor when the lights come on in the office and when they go off, or being able to look at when the efficiency of particular HVAC systems compared to others, depending on the age of the building, and being able to identify when they should be replaced. And some of the areas we found can be, where some of the biggest savings can be found, is by being able to look at your building management system. And that's, again, a plentiful source of data which firms really haven't put to good use before, because those systems have traditionally been very difficult to sort of interrogate, and the way that the information is sort of viewed and managed is something which not even I would particularly like to look at on a day-to-day basis. But there are big savings to be had, and some of the challenges we see with firms when they're looking at their existing portfolio is an ignorance of the full breadth of system capabilities. So investing in something like a building management or building automation system, but not understanding the potential energy benefits of managing that system from an energy perspective. An inactive relationship with third parties. So if there's a facilities management firm or a firm which is managing your building, not really being able to communicate or tie in or understand what they're doing with the building from an energy perspective, or an ad hoc or non-existent optimization procedure. So when a system or asset is installed at the first time, it's optimized, but it's never really monitored from that point onwards. So set points could change, or even the operational characteristics of the building could change, but that's never reflected in terms of how the assets or building management system is optimized. And that's one of the things which software really provides, is visibility into all of this data, and allows you to identify some of these opportunities from the very off, and continue to monitor to ensure that good performance persists. So the second area where we would look at finding savings is in better managing data for internal and external reporting purposes. And there's 3 challenges that we see firms facing here, and those are higher level of compliance risk. So as legislation continues to increase, firms are having to comply with that legislation, and there's financial penalties in cases for not doing so. There's rising stakeholder pressure to disclose, so more firms are being sort of pressured by whether it's their customers or investors to participate in schemes such as the CDP or generate GRI reports. And then we also see the non-central management of energy data. So this can impact even internal reporting. So if firms are to report quarterly on performance against KPIs, if you do not have a centralized data management system, the time surrounding how long it takes for you to sort of do those reports can be significant and have costs involved. So having a centralized reporting system can streamline the operational pressures placed on organizations for both internal and external reporting. And then the third area which we see firms being able to look for savings in is in terms of the supply side. And this is looking at optimizing procurement strategies and better managing existing utility contracts. And again, we see three main challenges which firms can face if they lack a sufficient level of data. One would be finding themselves on non-optimal tariffs, so entering into an agreement at a moment in time, however, not really monitoring the market or even looking at how maybe their consumption characteristics have changed, and finding themselves paying more per unit of energy than they actually could be if they were to change tariff or change supplier. Uncorrected utility billing errors. Unfortunately, it's a fact that not every utility bill is 100% correct. However, if no one's doing the checks on the customer side, it can be easy for these errors to go unnoticed. And this means that firms can end up paying duplicate bills or even not identify that some aspects of their tariff or contract has changed without them fully recognizing it. And then the third one is an inability to accurately forecast spend. So again, not having the data makes it very difficult to provide levels of certainty around budget requirements, which means firms really don't get the benefit of being able to make their sort of budgets fully work for the organization, because there's a significant amount tied up in terms of uncertainty around energy spend. So having good quality data helps alleviate these challenges and there's savings associated with those. And if you combine all three of those opportunities, it can result in significant savings for the organization. So in the hypothetical case which we ran through our business case toolkit, we found that whilst ramping up the software deployment, so not assuming it was in all sites, but assuming a gradual penetration of software throughout the organization, a growing organization, increasing energy spends, etc., we found that over the 5 years, the organization would save around $9.5 million compared to business as usual, and that's after taking into account the actual cost of software itself. So that provides some indication of how energy management software and energy data can really help your organization find some potential big savings. And if that number is particularly impressive, again, it totally varies per customer case. But the next step is to think, well, where are the other benefits we could be looking for? And here are just some more examples here of some more potential benefits. And those could be reducing CapEx by improving asset utilization, improving employee comfort and working conditions, so improving the output of your employees, de-risking decisions on energy efficiency investments by being able to run multiple scenarios based on accurate data, strengthening operational risk management, strengthening carbon risk management and accounting, or even engaging employees on energy and environmental issues so that they start to incorporate energy management within their day-to-day activities, are all further benefits which can be achieved by having access to good quality granular energy data with a good robust energy management platform managing that data on your behalf. And returning back to sort of the theme for today's webinar in terms of how energy data can be a new profit lever, I'd just like to use one example here of a firm everybody will be aware of in Walmart. So in 2003, Walmart committed to producing or procuring 7 billion kilowatt hours of renewable energy annually by 2020, along with reducing energy consumption by 20%. It's been estimated that by 2020, once both of these initiatives are fully implemented, Walmart is expecting to save around $1 billion annually in energy savings. So moving it into a profit perspective, in 2003, Walmart recorded profits of $17 billion, so at a 3.6% profit margin. To generate an extra $1 billion in profit, so the amount that Walmart expects to save from energy management, Walmart would have to increase its revenues by $28 billion. And to increase your revenues by $28 billion is no small feat and would require investment in new stores, staff, training, an awful lot of expenditure, whereas a similar performance or a similar impact to your profit can really be made by fully assessing your organization and really making sure that it's running at its most efficient as it can be today. So just to wrap up and provide a quick summary of some of the things I've been talking about today is there's really four main drivers investing in energy management. Those are customers, economics, sustainability, and legislation. Access to quality granular data really is the first step in terms of being able to reduce your energy consumption and get on the way of making sort of a sustainability and energy strategy really start to impact your profits. The second step is using a good quality management system to combine that data with analytics to really give the staff which you employ and have great faith in terms of their ability to find these savings, the tool that they require to really drive home these opportunities and for your organization to benefit from the savings. And then the list of potential benefit goes on beyond those, and that's something you should always consider is look beyond those quick wins to find further potential savings. So that's the end of my section today, and I look forward to taking some of your questions at the end.
Yeah, that was great, Alisdair. Thanks so much for doing that. And as a reminder to the audience, as we go through, please go ahead and post your questions in the chat window. And again, at the end of the session, we'll answer as many of those questions as we have time for. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Janie.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. My name is Janie Jeffries-Freer. I'm the president for eSight Energy. You can obviously tell I'm originally from Cambridge in the UK. I've been in the US since about 2008. And now we're based from Chicago, Illinois, which is our eSight Energy's US headquarters. So with regards to, let me just go back a slide. With regards to what we do as a company, just to kind of give you a bit of background for those of you that may not have be familiar with eSight, we're a global energy management software organization. Oh, I seem to have lost my slide. Here we are. Global energy management software organization. So what we do is we basically make software that helps organizations collect and manage their energy data really in a global perspective, but we also work with organizations that are extremely small, single box retail sites. We work with clients across a huge range of sizes and sectors, and we provide a solution that does comprehensive analytics right the way through to dashboarding that's available in the cloud or as an install-to-site solution. Now, obviously, what we do is completely valueless if there's no energy data, and this is probably the biggest problem that we have to look at on a daily basis. The problem is that a lot of clients don't have sub-metering, automated data collection, BAS systems with adequate metering plugged into it, and so forth. I mean, where I'm from, obviously, energy prices are kind of 4 or 5 times higher. In Europe's a little bit more advanced because of the fact that energy prices are so high and because of the fact that there's a lot more driving legislation to mandate that we need to be doing this. In the US, I think we're catching up, but we've still got a long way to go. So very often we go to organizations and we simply see that they just don't have the infrastructure there to really start an EMS, an energy management system program in earnest. So what do we do? How do we get that data? Obviously, there's going to be many different types of utilities. The primary 3, electricity, gas, and water, There may be no sub-metering. When you start to look at a project to put in metering to address this, you find that it's costly. It's going to take resources. Everyone's already doing 2 jobs. We don't maybe have a facilities department to take care of it. It's going to take a lot of time. We've got to select the vendor, get the system installed, have downtime. It's complicated. And organizations look at this and they think, goodness, we're not ready. We haven't got all of these things in place. We haven't got the budget. We're going to do nothing rather than take this on. We'll just do some simple housekeeping measures and we'll just kind of keep it as easy as that. But the problem is, you can't see your data. So, you might take a little walk down the hall and see, if your chillers are optimized, but really and truly, you have no way of knowing on a daily basis what's actually happening. And energy costs are one, if not the most heavy cost to your organization. The top 2, energy, salaries. And you watch what you're spending in other areas, but obviously energy costs are one of the things that not every organization is looking at. And that's stupid because it is obviously one of your highest operational costs. When you don't look at something, it obviously gets out of control. So what we see is energy usage rising and rising. Everybody knows the phrase, you can't manage what you can't measure. So what we thought is, rather than kind of have organizations who choose to electively do nothing because they see their project as too complex to get the data, what if we actually found a way to simplify that? What if we were able to go to our customers and say, you know what, we can actually literally serve you up your data and you don't have to do a thing. Sounds like magic, but this is one of the reasons why we have a partnership with Urjanet. So Urjanet are specialists in getting this data, and we'll talk about what data in a minute, but essentially, rather than go through this massive complex project and disrupt your infrastructure and put in all this hardware, it's a simple subscription fee and you get access to your data. Now that data can be billing data or meter interval data. You get that data delivered into your eSight system a day after it's happened. So day plus 1 data is what that's called. And it means that rather than trying to look back a previous billing cycle and try to figure out what happened over a month ago when it's just impossible with like 2 numbers on an invoice, you actually get some pretty granular data the day after it's happened. Now, we're saying here you get key demand information and trend granular data. We'll talk about what that means in a minute, but it's not just simply one number on a bill, and I think that's very important. Now, what's the point of this? How does it all work? So essentially, there's a few key steps. I mean, there's obviously diversifications of this, but essentially, an energy management program should follow a few key steps. Collecting the data, trending where you've come from, like looking in your rearview mirror to understand exactly where you've come from, so that you can then monitor your usage, how your energy is being used across your site, analyzing and reporting to find out where you can make savings, optimizing to implement those savings, and finally, making sure that you've got exception reports to alert you if there's any slip back in performance. The overall objective is to drive this nice little red profile shape, squish it in and drive it down so that your energy usage profile essentially shrinks. So what data do we get? Okay, so we said there's 2 types of data, billing data and interval data, that we're going to deliver to you with Urjanet. So what you're going to get first of all is, let's say, billing data. So what this is going to do is it's going to firstly enable you to check any anomalies on your bill. It's going to secondly let you to analyze trends. So you can say, like this little screenshot up here, you can say, for this year, year on year, how are we doing? Is our usage higher? Is our cost higher? If we have interval data as well, we can actually compare our billing data with our interval data. We can see, is the usage rising over time? What is the cost impact of what we're doing on our business? And importantly, as we're making savings, we can actually realistically measure what those savings are to get a handle on the effectiveness, ROI, and payback of our project. Now, with regards to interval data, what we've got here is a wider range of analysis opportunities. So with interval data, you get a far more accurate way to actually baseline, to know where you've come from, to actually set targets to reduce your energy usage, to monitor that real-time performance, to normalize for external factors. So you can do this to an extent with billing data, but certainly with interval data, you can take much higher frequency data and look at things like occupancy levels or outside air temperature, and really get some extremely good forecasting methods in place to actually track what you're wanting to save and also savings when you've made them. So how does this look with regards to actually seeing it in action? So just a few examples of some real data that we've anonymized from customers. So in this example, what we're looking at is kilowatt hour usage against a driving factor of air temperature. And you can see when the air temperature is one particular value, we sometimes have some lower usage and we sometimes have some higher usage. So the first thing that you want to be doing is looking and seeing, why have we got high and low performance when the driving factor is exactly the same? And that's a very good place to start tracking why you've got differentiators in your performance when actually everything should be operating this efficiently all the time. This particular example here is actually a way of overlaying data. So we've got interval data for each particular day, and this is a good example of what you can do with a main meter interval data, looking at exactly what you've done for the month and saying, okay, you know what, we've got a nice low trend of usage, we can clearly see our weekends usage here, but hang on a second, halfway through the month we've got this massive high usage starting. So why has that happened? And we can strip that data back and say, well, hang on a second, we know that we've got higher usage here, and we can then go and investigate on which days that occurred. And actually in this particular instance, the customer found a double pulse count on a particular meter that was installed, and without that visualization had no idea that they were being billed almost double for a number of months. Now, rather than actually having data come to you on a paper bill and trying to kind of translate that into something that's meaningful, or shove your figures into Excel, you're spending a lot of time crunching data and not actually managing energy. We all know about dashboards. We're very big on dashboards here at eSight, but we don't want you to have something called dashboard delusion, which is what we see as just a standalone dashboard with no real information behind it. And that's why it's important to have a dashboard that links to an EMS, that links to proper data, billing data and interval data. So another one of the things that we can do is serve this data up to you and aggregate all of the key things that you want to see into a set of rotating or cycling screens, so that rather than go and have to run 20 reports in a day, the key information about your performance, how you're doing against target, how your bill trends are, is just there, dished up and displayed to you. For those of you that still want social signage, you can actually translate those facts into something that your general public is going to understand. You know, not everyone understands what a kilowatt hour or BTU is. So there are ways of intelligently translating that into social signage to tell people how they're doing and make that information palatable. So how do our clients actually do this? How does this work in the real world? So we've just picked out 5 quick examples just to show you how companies have kind of really used this data in action to make savings. So baseload analysis. Baseload is a great place to start making energy savings in earnest. It lets you look at things like your energy used when your site should be during a downtime or inactive, or you've stopped manufacturing, or equipment is supposed to be off. Now, looking at one such client who has looked at baseload amongst other things, Liberty Property Trust, a very large commercial real estate company located on the East Coast. Now, they've obviously taken their data, they've analyzed this, they've basically looked at their baseload data, they've fed that data through to SharePoint dashboards. They've basically made a 5% savings on a pilot phase, which you can see is a pretty significant number here. And the last published figures that we had, it's obviously got a lot bigger since then, was a 17.9% reduction in energy usage. And that would be through things like targeting exactly what energy is being wasted by being able to see that interval data during those inoperable, or supposed to be inoperable, hours of the building. Recognizing high usage. So this is another thing that always amazes me. You know, you go to a client, you do a rollout, you start to look at the data, and things always appear that you just weren't aware of just by seeing the data. You know, recognizing that there's a spike, an abnormal usage, set points have been changed, and so forth. This particular example is actually from a company called Bombardier. Now, they're a very large aerospace manufacturing company, and what they'd seen was they'd taken data and they actually saw some extremely high usage, and through that they identified that they had maintenance issues. Maintenance was conducted, they found a faulty solenoid valve. That valve cost was about $80 to fix, but the cost to them of not fixing that, we're looking at $160,000. So you think about that, just gaining the visualization into what you need by actually seeing that data transparently presented. Setting best practice models. So it's all well and good saying, hey, you have to save 5%, but actually trying to understand exactly what you can achieve based on how similar sites are doing, how other people within your industry are doing. There's EPA standards such as Energy Star. There's ways of benchmarking your own buildings by actually defining the driving factors. Now, if we look at a company called eSight as an example, these guys actually, again, they're based in DC. They actually manage energy. They do things like lead consumption standards, and they have a whole range of different services that they provide to their clients to help them manage and reduce energy usage. And by looking at kind of what they can do and benchmarking sites, they've actually delivered some huge savings. This particular one here is the American Society of Hematology. We're looking at actually what they predicted they were going to do, and a huge overachievement, resulting in a 9% reduction in electricity, nearly 20% in water usage, and obviously 40% in carbon footprint. And I'm sure I don't need to translate that into a dollar value. It's massive for a commercial office. It's incredible. Now, once you've made all these savings, the common problem that we have is slip back. I've been to sites before and I've spoken with clients before who have, implemented savings measures. One such client had actually put in a full new BAS system a year ago and had it calibrated, had not touched it, well, allegedly had not touched it since. And obviously things have been changed, set points have been altered. They haven't necessarily tracked that usage in any proper way. When we got hold of their data, they were actually using more energy than before they had the new BAS system put in. Now, if they'd just been able to set alarms and notifications to let them know that that was the case, we wouldn't have been in this position. So someone like Carlsberg, as an example in kind of real life, what they do is they have dashboards in every location in their brew house. Each member of staff has tailored information showing just for their area what they're doing. They're looking at the efficiency of the product that they turn out. They're looking at spikes or missing areas of data. They're looking at peak demand thresholds. A lot of us have tariffs that we're on. When you hit a certain demand or load level, you get an extra penalty for being billed. So being able to track that and reduce that usage with everybody getting involved to know what they need to look at, again, you can see some significant savings that are being delivered. One of the things that we found as well is organizations who actually get everybody involved tend to save more. It's those organizations who have dashboards, who have signage, who make it a part of everybody's daily routine. And what I mean by that is those people who are using the energy need to know exactly what's happening, simply because they're the people affecting it on a daily basis. Ricoh Arena, this is a London 2012 Olympic venue. They basically have dashboards throughout their sites, in their reception areas. They get their staff involved, they get their visitors involved. Everybody's thinking all the time in that venue about energy management because it's so prominently displayed, and we see some huge successes from organizations that do that. So just to conclude, essentially what we're looking at is how you actually leverage that data. And you do that by getting your data delivered to you seamlessly so that you can reduce your energy costs and carbon. 30% it may sound like a big figure, but I tell you what, that's perfectly achievable. You can save time creating energy reports so that you're actually managing your own energy data rather than actually crunching the numbers. You can automatically be told if there's a problem. You can see specifically what your ROI is. If you can't tell your finance department what that is, 9 times out of 10, the project that can't be justified from a payback perspective is going to get a strike through it. So this is critical. getting all of your data into one place, so it's not in, part of it's in the BAS, part of it's in bills, part of it's with the supplier website, getting that delivered to you so it's in one database, normalizing it so that you can understand, well, we have used a bit more, but it's been a really hot summer this year, and raising that awareness so everybody is aware of what they can do to help. In this final footnote, Excel is not a solution. It's not about crunching those numbers, it's about managing your data, and that's what this is all about. Getting that data so that all of your methods for driving down your energy usage are pre-cooked and ready to go for you, and having that data delivered to you so you don't have to go through the trauma of a hugely expensive, complex project. And that's what we're here to really show you is possible today. So yeah, be very happy to take any questions, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Janie. That was excellent. And now we'd like to provide some brief background on Urjanet. At Urjanet, we focus on one simple mission, and that is to provide the big energy data organizations use to make smarter, more profitable, and eco-friendly energy decisions. We don't provide software of any kind or energy management services of any kind. Energy data is all that we do. Our data is used throughout the enterprise, helping to bring efficiencies and better decision-making to key stakeholders in accounting, procurement, facilities and energy management, and sustainability. And our data is packaged into 4 product offerings. Utility data, which provides detailed information from the utility bill, along with a copy of the bill image itself. And this provides our customers with a richer source of data that's delivered faster and more cost effectively than any other means. And also meter data, which is a stream of interval or smart meter data that's provided without having to install expensive on-premise sensors, data loggers, or other types of metering equipment. And then we also provide weather data, which includes hourly observations from over 4,000 certified weather stations. And then finally, alerts. Alerts is a data feed that includes notifications about possible billing and usage anomalies. We also want to ensure that the participants on the call today are aware of our annual energy conference, Spark 2014. This is something we're really excited about. The event will take place in Atlanta, October 8th through 9th, and it's going to include executives from Fortune 500 companies, along with leaders from the energy management software and services space. And everyone's coming to Atlanta to discuss innovations in energy management. So for more information on this, you can go ahead and hit our website, and there'll be information on the Spark conference. And with that, we'd like to get into the Q&A. This has been a very active audience, so we appreciate all your participation. We've got a bunch of questions that we're going to try to go through here. And Alisdair, we're going to start off with you. There's a question that's directed your way, and that is for you to comment on the percent of your customers that are using an automated data feed versus still relying on manual processes. And as a follow-on, for those that are doing it manually, what types of problems does it present?
Yeah, great question, and it's really something that we see vary depending on the industry. So again, as our role Verdantix, we take very much a market approach and look across a number of industries, and we see firms with different levels of sort of experience around data collection, and unfortunately that can also differ depending on what firms are actually trying to do. So utility bill data is something firms have been looking at for a longer time, and some do that through automated in-house, or some use external service providers, but a lot generally do still rely on manual data capture. And when it comes to more so demand side, the number of people even capturing that data is far lower. But some of the problems which we see associated with manual data collection is the first one is sort of the potential for error. It's the biggest thing we always advise is there's no point collecting bad data. Any decisions you make on bad data, they're not worth making, essentially. So bad data is a big issue. The cost of doing so, it takes a long time having people do this manually. Automation reduces those costs. Automation also gives you the data in a far more timely manner so that you can make observations and actions and act on them in a far quicker way. And another part is, by using automation, you're generally relying on a service provider or a software provider that knows about this area. They're experts, and they will uncover all of the information on a bill or the meter and look for trends, whereas some of your internal employees that you may have doing some of the data collection and processing will only be looking for those sort of high level numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Alisdair. And then, Janie, it looks like someone in the audience is interested in the topic of gamification. They noted that you are talking about examples of firms that are promoting their energy savings. The question is, can you talk about teams who have worked together and been competitive with one another to promote who is saving the most energy?
Yeah, certainly. I think it depends very much on the sector that our clients are in as to kind of how they approach this. Certainly our educational clients like to get involved, different campus buildings, different school areas, different schools themselves across a district, and they do that typically by doing things like ranking, looking at kind of which is the best and worst performing site, which is costing the most, which is using the most of out of hours, promoting those across multi-site dashboards as an example, and doing like little promotional things that they can link to their website. We have other organizations who actually run dashboarding and reporting internally. As an example, one of our manufacturing clients actually have daily huddles, weekly huddles with their teams each day. We're talking about kind of engineers and operators. Every day you've got the shift leader coming in and saying, right, how did shift A do? How did shift B do? How did shift C do during different times of the day? They look at kind of how they've done throughout the week. They try and actually hit their target. They try and keep their energy usage below a certain threshold of usage for the week, and so forth. So there's different ways of kind of approaching that, but I think certainly the instruments are there to be able to kind of slice and dice and present that data in any way that you see fit. I think a bit of competition is always a bit of fun as well. It really does kind of get that buy-in. So yeah, hopefully that's a good enough answer.
No, I think that's great. There's another question here that's been directed at Urjanet, so I'll take a crack at that, and that has to do with the advantages of using Urjanet's automated data feed. I think Alisdair touched on this, but definitely for utility bill data, obviously there's a number of benefits. I mean, fundamentally, we've automated the process, and so it's going to result in data that's much more accurate. It's richer. We're pulling actually all the data elements off a utility bill. In some cases, that's as many as 125 different data elements that we're capturing. It's also, of course, going to come much faster because the bill's posted, we're pulling that data and delivering it. There's no waiting for the bill to go through the mail. And the whole thing should be much more cost effective because no one really thinks that the manual processing of paper bills is a very cost effective way to handle that. But as it relates to meter data, meter data there's way too much volume associated with meter data to even think about doing anything manual there. The only solution is either to install, on-premise metering equipment, which can be expensive, or to use Urjanet's offering, which just provides a data stream in lieu of having to install this gear on site. And then there was a follow-on to this question that I'll also address, and that is how would someone get started with using the Urjanet data feed? And I would say we work with our clients in a couple of ways. We first take a look at the list of utilities that they want to be pulling data from because we would activate those accounts on our platform. But perhaps most importantly, we always want to understand how it is they're going to be using the data. Most often, they want to be integrating our data into systems that they may have in place. And so our data is actually delivered in a relational format, which makes it pretty straightforward to integrate it into their systems. But the other reason we like to have that conversation is oftentimes once we understand what they're trying to do with the data, we can refer them to a partner of ours. We have folks like eSight and others who have tremendous applications for visualizing and tracking energy data. And sometimes our customers need services like bill validation and bill payment or sustainability reporting. And so our partners do a great job of providing that type of service. So hopefully that answers that question. And then it looks like, Janie, the next one's directed at you, and that is you mentioned that you talked about getting data in near real time. How can the timeliness of the data be additional help to departments outside of energy management?
Goodness, I mean, gosh. Well, let's break this down. So, I mean, obviously, if you're getting data delivered to you and you're in a finance department, we can look at timely bill pay. We can avoid late fees. We can basically analyze that data and look at anomalous data rather than just paying straight away. So, I mean, that's absolutely critical. To the maintenance department, we can actually be aware of, particularly with interval data, we can be aware of anomalies and actually get maintenance involved a lot sooner. So I mean, there's various different ways in which it's useful. I think eliminating that 45-day wait, data doesn't necessarily get or is able to be analyzed in such a good way unless you've actually got a company doing it for you, because 45 days later, gosh, most of us can't remember what happened last week. So I think having that data distributed out so that you've got the team who's able to actually manage the finance side and manage the actual optimization side, I think those two areas are probably the most critical in addressing the usage levels.
Okay, good. Thanks for answering that, Janie. And then we're coming up on the top of the hour, but Alisdair, there's another question here that I think you can answer, and that is, besides Walmart, what other companies are investing in energy efficiency projects to boost the bottom line?
Yeah, so Walmart is most definitely just one example, but the retail sector is a very good sector we've found for looking at energy efficiency ideas, mainly because that profit margin is so tight and it really provides a competitive advantage. But we've seen other types of retailers, so one high street fashion chain, actually using energy data in a very strategic manner. They've been advised that keeping store doors open would increase their sales performance. Well, they were able to use energy data to normalize sales against increased energy consumption through obviously the store being open to the elements, and that allowed them to try and really optimize the strategy in terms of which days of the week would it maybe be appropriate to keep the doors open, and even which seasons. And that's a good example of being able to use energy data to feed into strategic decisions that can potentially have an impact on sales, but not forgetting the costs. We're actually conducting a project here at the moment looking at food distribution in North America in cold storage warehouses. And again, we've seen some fantastic opportunities of being able to use energy data to identify abnormalities in sort of refrigeration loads or in having lighting scheduling in place. And we've seen examples where some distribution centers that have seen annual energy costs drop from around the well over the $60,000 mark to around $30,000. Actually, those were monthly energy reductions. So that is significant savings. And also big technology firms. So we've seen good work from the likes of Microsoft and IBM and Cisco, those firms which have very large portfolios. So the ones which we see making the most improvement are either firms which operate in low profit margin industries, or those firms which have very big corporate brands to look after, but then also have a little bit more cash in the bank to be a bit more adventurous and be really seen as the trendsetters. But what we definitely see is more firms engaging with energy management and looking to ensure they are also benefiting from the opportunities that exist out there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Alisdair. So we've run up to the top of the hour. There's actually, I appreciate everyone submitting so many questions. There's just a bunch that we're not going to have time to answer, but we will get back separately and answer all the questions that have been posed, and perhaps we can even summarize all the unanswered questions and provide them to the group at large. And again, we will be making a copy of these slides and a recording of the session available to everyone who attended. You'll be emailed that shortly. And that concludes our event today. So thanks very much for joining us. We hope that this has helped you better understand how energy data can become a new profit lever for your organization. Thanks very much.